Hi, everyone. This is Lindsay with Pathfinder SEO, and you are here today for a skills training session around mastering the art of writing page titles and meta descriptions. And this is the first task that I did on my first job, day on the job as an SEO account manager like 15 plus years ago when I started in the industry space. And I remember so clearly what it was like to learn writing, how to write page titles and meta descriptions and mastering this skill. And here we are 15 years later, and it's still highly relevant, and it's still one of the impactful things that you can do to help your clients get more visibility on Google. And so for those of you that are here live, feel free in the chat to say hello, entering questions as we go. At the end of the webinar, we can also dive into questions that go beyond the topic and the theme here today. And let's go ahead and just dive in. And this is a skills training session. And so I've tried to structure it in a really easy to follow format. We're going to cover the what, the why, the when, and the how, spending the biggest amount of time in the how department on page titles and meta descriptions. And this beginning content is just really to make sure that we're all on the same page with what these fields are, what they do, why they're important, etc. So let's start with what are page titles and meta descriptions. Essentially, they are short descriptions of a web page that are often utilized in the search engine results page, or you'll see that shortened into SERPs or SERPs. And the page title can often get called a title tag or an SEO title. And the page title also displays in the browser bar. So in this screenshot, you can see a little bit there of essentially a search engine results page and the snippets that represent each website or web page in this instance. The page title is the text in the blue, and the meta description is the text in the gray or kind of the darker color copy there. So that's a little bit there about kind of, what they are. And they live in the header HTML on each page of a site, and each content management system has a place to enter them, depending on if you're on WordPress, Squarespace, Shopify. And so from a really basic standpoint, if we go over and look at a page and we go and we view the source of the page, and we're looking at the header HTML in here, you are going to find the title in here. In this case, we're using Rank Math for our implementation. So here is our page title, our SEO title, and here's our meta description for this page. So that's kind of where it lives in the HTML. It also, the page title gets displayed up here in the browser bar, but otherwise this content doesn't live on the page here. And behind the scenes, if we go in and look at the back end of a website, an example of where these fields live, if we go in and let's just, this is our other WordPress site. If we go in and hit edit page, we can find essentially the location of where these live and where I can control them. I think this site is powered using Yoast. And so you can see in here that Yoast, those Yoast fields of where I can control those that content. So why we care about these, why it matters, why you're even here is that the first is that the keyword usage in these fields provides Google with context. And so when we do a nice job and we add custom and well-written page titles and meta descriptions, this is some of the content that Google finds first when it crawls a web page. So if you think of a crawler and going a sequential manner through the header HTML before it gets to the body, those page titles and meta descriptions are at the very top of the page source code. And so that's some of the early context Google gets about a web page. So if it says in the page title, home, and then the name of the business, the context they pick up on is that this is probably the home page for that business. On the other hand, if it's a well-written, engaging page title, then Google might get some content or context around what this page is going to be all about. The next reason we care about these is because they help you win the click. Google and the other search engines often, but not always, utilize these in the search engine results page. So if we go over and we do a search on Google, In this case, it's a brand search. We have our page title here and our meta description here. So you can think about this as being a little bit like, ad text almost. It's not the same tight control that we get when we have, a Google ad running where we have total control over that text. But it's us putting our best foot forward to controlling the verbiage Google's using in the search engine results page, and they can help us win the click in a competitive space. The other thing that we've learned over the years is that click data is part of Google's systems. And so we think of Google as having an algorithm or sort of a formula for calculating who's number one and who's number 100. And SEOs have long believed that Google looks at click data as part of its broader system. So we don't know how big of a part it is of Google's systems, but if we go and we do a search for something like things to do in Barcelona, and we do a search for something like this, and we come down and we see all these listings, Google can use machine learning to understand if I do this search and I scroll down and I click on this result, this result gets clicked on more often than a normal, I don't know, let's call that number 5 or number 6 result on Google is. Then Google might learn from that and actually have some self-fulfilling prophecy that sort of moves this listing up in the rankings a bit, because it's learning that I am clicking on this and then spending a long time on that web page. So the content that helps me win the click when I'm in a position 5, 6, 7, 8 might be part of what helps me to move into positions 1, 2, 3, and 4, because Google is paying attention to sort of the click data and the click and user experience or user activity, I should say, on a page like this. So that click data is part of Google's systems. And ultimately, page titles impact both users and search engines. So they impact users because when I see a result here and I read this text, I want to have sort of, from a user experience, a fluid experience as I move over to that web page. If I get, over to the web page and the content is significantly different than what I read or experienced here, I might bounce back. So there's a user experience component. And then it impacts the search engines. So there's a lot of reasons why these fields matter to us as SEOs, as marketers. And there's a lot of low-hanging fruit to be had in this space, even though page titles and meta descriptions have been a part of SEO for so many years. And so now that we know what they are and why they're important, we have to think about when do we want to focus on them, and when should we put some time and attention into these fields. And there are a couple of different times that I think about page titles and meta descriptions. One of the core times is before a new website goes live. So whether you're building the first website for a client, they've never had, it's their brand new first website, or they're doing a website redesign project, focusing on page titles and meta descriptions just before the site goes live can be a really good practice. Because you're basically kind of, in this context, setting them up for long-term success, like building some SEO foundation there. Another good time to think about page titles and meta descriptions is as you or a client create new pages or posts. So I have a client on a monthly SEO retainer with us, and yesterday they launched 4 new pages that I've been waiting eons for them to build, that they built for us as part of their content team in-house. And we went in then and said, okay, now let's go in and customize those page titles and meta descriptions and level them up, because these are really SEO-oriented pages. So that's another one. You can do sort of an annual tune-up for a client or for your own website, where you say, well, it's not I'm creating a piece of content for the first time or doing a significant content revision causing me to look at this, and I'm not redesigning our site, but I haven't paid a lot of attention to page titles and meta descriptions before for this client. So I'm going to do an annual tune-up project and come in and try to level these up. And so now could be a really good time, depending on, pretty much every client practically fits into one of these categories right now. They either have a new website, they're either generating new content, or they might have fallen into a position where this isn't something you've spent a lot of time doing for them. So if this is the when, and we see the value in doing the work, the biggest thing is that there is value here to be had. And so this is not a free exercise when we're delivering SEO services. It's also not something that I consider to be under the umbrella of web design. It's something that is an SEO specific task. And so a client needs to be paying you for this. It may be something that you have wrapped into your web design, website redesign or new website projects where you have a line item in the project scope or a handful of line items for the things you do for SEO. So 301 redirects, keyword research, page titles and meta descriptions, and it's baked into those website redesign projects that you're going to manage these fields. And so you know that it's in the project scope and you've accounted for the time and effort you're going to put into it. That can be a really good way to handle things. Another opportunity to handle this is part of monthly SEO. So if you have a monthly retainer with clients, you can allocate some of that, monthly budget to doing a tune-up. And you can evolve as the client's site evolves with customizing these fields as new content gets created. Another really good way to focus on this for a client is by selling them an SEO tune-up or some kind of a one-time sprint project where this could be the standalone task that you're doing or a handful of different tasks to sort of level up the website in the search results. So there's a lot of ways that you can package page titles and meta descriptions into an existing project scope or some kind of a one-time project scope like a sprint. But ultimately, the big thing I just want to stress here is that customizing these fields is something that I consider to be putting on an SEO hat, and it's not something we should be doing for free, that there's a lot of value here for clients, and thus they should be paying for this as a service. We'll talk a little bit more about how to price this effort and how to kind of estimate the effort after we get through the how, and we've talked about some of our strategies there. So you know when to focus on them. And now let's talk about the how, which is what you really came here for. And I really look at page titles and meta descriptions as being an art and a science, meaning that if 2 or 3 of us were to sit down and write page titles and meta descriptions for one website, we'd all come out with a different end product. And yet there are some best practices along the way that we can use to kind of evaluate the quality of the work. And like everything with SEO and the delivery of the service, we really want to follow a process. So the first step of the process is to gather the necessary resources. And so what you're generally going to need is access to the website, because we're going to want to be able to actually implement our work. Sometimes at our agency, we don't end up with access to the client's website. It's very, very rare. And we can just deliver it to a web developer in a spreadsheet and have them implement it. But ideally, having access to the website is a big step in the right direction. And we're going to use a spreadsheet to kind of organize our work, and I'm going to share a template for that with you. And then I want to have some basic keyword awareness. So if we extract ourselves from the world of writing page titles and meta descriptions for a minute and think about SEO more holistically, we think about the fact that ideally before we're doing actionable SEO work like this, we have strategic SEO work already completed, meaning we understand the client's keyword space. We've built keyword awareness. And if you don't have that keyword awareness, or if you just need a refresher and you want to look at real-time data, one of the best tools in your toolkit for quick and dirty keyword research and keyword awareness is the Google Search Console. So a lot of times when I go to write page titles and meta descriptions, I'll ideally have their keyword research pulled up or their keyword rank tracking list or something like that. But I might also have the Search Console pulled up if they have an existing live website, because in here in the performance report, there's a treasure trove of keyword data. And I can actually look very specifically and say, okay, here's the page or post I'm optimizing. And I can come in and I can filter down and I can look at the keywords that people are searching for as it relates to this blog post. And then I can know that, oh, I should probably put the phrase SEO proposal template in my page title and meta description. because I can see how many impressions it's already gotten, meaning how many searches out there or volume. And I can see the clients on the map, but maybe could rank higher if we did a better job with their on-site optimization. So those are the things you're going to need. And the tool that I have for you here is this little very basic spreadsheet. So let me I should have had this pulled up already, but I can get it pretty quickly. I'm going to drop this into the chat for you. And it is simply a link to a Google Sheet, essentially. So it's a very simple template, and it's a Google Sheet that's going to make a copy of it so you can save and store your work here. So this is literally as simple as it gets. We have a column for the page we're working on. We have a column for the focus keyword we're going to include. So in this case, our focus keyword is sort of like, what is our best fit keyword for this page? We draft our page title here. As we write a page title, the field over here should update. Oh, it did. There was a little lag there with the character count, and then the same with the meta description and the meta description length. So this is a place to house our work as we're getting into this. And our next task is something that people don't do enough of. And so the next piece of the process is really to come up with strategy here. How are we going to prioritize our effort for impact? And the reason this is so important is because whether you are doing this for your own website or a client's website, we are all resource constrained around time. And for a small website, it's going to be relatively easy to write page titles and meta descriptions for all of the pages on your website, because maybe you only have a 5 or a 10 page website. We can just simply get in and knock it all out. It's not a huge time effort. On the other hand, you might be working with a client with a 100-page website or a 1,000-page website or even more. And as you get bigger, you start to see some loss of value as you get deeper into a website of customizing those page titles and meta descriptions, because there might be a lot of pages in there that just don't have a lot of SEO value or SEO opportunity. And so we want to be strategic about our effort and sort of time box this project. And this really helps us to stay profitable as an agency owner and to kind of stay focused on the highest impact work. And so as we time box our effort, we basically have two categories that we can think about of our work. Here we can write custom page titles and meta descriptions for one segment of pages. And I think about the spreadsheet as sort of being where we're going to do that work. But then we can also automate page titles and meta descriptions, particularly if your clients are utilizing WordPress, but in other content management systems, you can do similar things, where we come up with patterns and rules, and we allow the SEO plugin, in this screenshot is Yoast, to automatically generate a page title and meta description based on the content type and based on variables and text that we enter in there. And so this is how we scale our effort and how we can do a pass on a large website that could have 1,000 pages and maybe time box our effort to saying, I'm only going to do 4 or 5 hours of work here. And yet we walk away from the project saying that we've customized all the most important pages. We've automated every content type so that we know we're walking away getting like an A grade for all the customization. And let's say everything we automated gets like a B, but that every page on the website has a unique page title and meta description. And the client got a lot of value out of our work because we are able to box it into an effort that makes financial sense to them. So how do we like start to wrap our head around this time boxing the effort and getting strategic with things? The first thing is to think about the key pages we have for customization. So the ones we're going to write. And I think about the homepage. That's sort of a gimme. We know the homepage is going to get searched for, when people search for the brand. We should definitely customize that page. We might also decide to customize the main navigation. So we might say, okay, we're going to go in and write custom for the full main navigation and anything in the drop down, because those are other, generally speaking, pretty core pages. We might decide we want to customize for pages that are already driving organic traffic. So we come into the Search Console and we say, okay, we're going to hit the main navigation, the home page, And then I'm going to go through and look and define, okay, I want to go with the top 25 pages that are already getting traction on Google and driving, traction. Maybe I'm going to go and put my effort there as well. So I'm building sort of a concept that's going to be unique for different clients in different scenarios of what I'm going to customize versus what I'm going to automate. The other thing we might want to do is do it for those pages that are created with SEO intent. So they might not be the homepage or the main navigation, and they might be newer, and so they're not driving a lot of organic traffic yet. But we created the blog post or the page with a vision of, hey, this is going to really map well to getting traffic from Google. So we should probably customize those meta descriptions and page titles. The other ones that we can think about on the flip side of this are content types for automation can be frequently created content types. So think blog posts, webinars, events, products on an e-commerce website. These might be ripe pages to automate because we know that there's a lot of frequently changing content, new things getting added. Sometimes they're big content types. So there's 1,000 products. And I want to kind of level up my page title and meta description for those large content types as I'm getting started. So in step 1, we got our resources. In step 2, we're getting strategic about how we're going to utilize our time to have the most impact. And I want to talk for a minute about what this looks like in a couple of real world examples for you so that you can better understand the concept of time boxing the effort and how do you determine what to do for what different website. So if we were coming into a website, and I am going to pull up an e-commerce site. And so this is an example of a relatively large e-commerce site. It has, from a content standpoint, it has a homepage. It has a navigation with a lot. This is Shopify, so a lot of collection pages. So if I quickly did the math here, I would say, okay, we've got about 8 different primary categories. And let's just say on average, there are 8 or 6 links below it. There's probably about 50-ish collection pages here. And then we come in here and we go through, okay, there's not a lot of other pages. So one of the things that we could really do here is depending on the client's, budget with us, we could say, okay, in our project here today that we're going to focus on page titles and meta descriptions, we're going to break this down and we're going to customize everything that is in the main navigation and the drop down. And then we're going to automate all of the products and any other collection pages and other content that's not out there, that's not rising to the surface here. And so we could estimate this project and we could start to understand in our agency space, maybe the average amount of time it takes our team to write a page title and meta description for a page. And then we can estimate the size and scale of the effort here by just doing some simple division and multiplication, et cetera. So we are like, okay, there's about 50 links here, and then we've got at least another 10 or so here. So we're at 60 or 70 pages of automation, and then we can multiply that by, it takes our team 15 minutes or whatever it might be to identify the focus keyword and write a good page title and meta description. And then it takes us another 5 minutes to later edit that and review it and get it implemented on the site. So we can do some math around the size and scale of the effort to see if it fits into our budget. If it doesn't, if that's too much for, say, the SEO setup you're doing in conjunction with a new website going live, you might have to get even more strategic about how you break this down. And you can do this by saying, okay, well, then we're going to only go across the top. We're just going to do the high level, like the see all pages. That would be one way to kind of stay wide on the website, essentially hitting all the different product categories, but not going as deep. And then down the road, as part of our monthly SEO service, maybe we'll come back around and we'll customize page titles and meta descriptions for these internal collection pages, for instance. The other thing that we've done at our agency is to take more of a business mindfulness approach to this. So instead of going kind of wide but staying at the kind of high top of the level of the surface, we go deep in the areas that matter most to the client. So if you think about their navigation, maybe it is tents and sleeping bags that are like their cornerstone products. So we're going to do in our first pass of work, customization around everything in the tent and sleeping bag space. And then down the road, we're going to come back and tackle the rest of it. So what we're trying to do here is some project management and some strategic thinking. And that comes from looking at the client's website. It comes from knowing the client's business. And it also comes from having a basic awareness around like where do they get their traffic from Google if they have an existing website, or kind of what are some of those high opportunity keyword pages. So we want to think about that kind of thing before we get started, and create our strategic plan around writing page titles and meta descriptions. And part of why we're doing this is because sometimes we have multiple people playing different roles in this exercise. So at our agency, the SEO account manager plays the role of knowing this is the time we need to go write page titles and meta descriptions for the website. So they identify that this is a task that makes effort. They identify the amount of time we can apply to it based on the project scope and what's been sold. And then they get strategic about how to break that time down and use it most effectively to accomplish the task. And they gather all of the resources that are needed, and then they can turn this over if you have a bigger team or you're looking to scale, in this case, to a copywriter on our team who, with those parameters, can come in and actually do the hard work of writing the page titles and meta descriptions. But if the SEO account manager doesn't do that and just sends over a task to a copywriter, go write page titles and meta descriptions for this website, then the copywriter has no parameters. There's a very large chance that they're going to go down a rabbit hole and do it for 100 pages when we only had budget for 50. Or they might get lost in the process because their skill is the writing skill. And the SEO account manager's skill is this kind of stuff, this strategic thinking around how to break the project down. If you're applying this to your own website, it still makes sense because if I'm working on it for our agency, or in this case, for Pathfinder's website, we still have to think about the resources we're putting towards it and find this balance between customization and automation. So that's step 2, is kind of figure out the impact. The next step is to really list the pages that we're going to customize and note focus keywords. So in here, I'm going to come into my spreadsheet and I'm going to start listing the URLs that matter to me that I want to work on. And so if I was doing this for our agency website, it might look a little bit like this. And I'm coming in and saying, okay, these are the pages that we need to, focus on. And I'm dropping in the URLs. I know this feels a bit manual. You can think of ways to accelerate through this, and I'll show you some of those in a bit. But I can list the pages I want, and then I can list the focus keywords here. And if I don't know them off the top of my head, I can go in and leverage something like the Google Search Console to help me understand, okay, this is going to be the focus keyword as our brand. This might be digital agency in Aspen. This could be Google Ads services in Aspen, etc. So we can note our focus keywords and kind of get more organized around this project. So here's some examples. You have your brand for your homepage, maybe your own, if this is your website, it could be your own name for the about page, because people search for you by the name of your agency, but then also they might look for you by your own personal name. Your services page in this context might be service plus location. So you might be serving, I'm a web designer in Atlanta. Alternatively, you might be a web designer for general contractors or architects or something like that. So you might have a focus keyword that blends the service you provide with where you provide it, or the service you provide and who you provide it to, or what industries you serve. And then your contact page could be as simple as contact and brand. Not every page needs a keyword that's really heavily optimized. So you don't want to stuff a keyword into the contact page when the contact page is just, contact and the name of the business. You don't have to do contact best web designer in Atlanta. kind of thing, that would be overdoing it in terms of keyword strategy. So tips on keyword usage, no stuffing. We just talked about that. Don't say, well, like, I don't know where to put this keyword, so I'm going to shove it into my privacy policy page or place it into the contact page. The keyword needs to make sense for the page. We can leverage the Google Search Console for insights. We want to avoid duplicates when we can, so we're not having two pages optimized around the same focus keyword. And then your homepage is your strongest page. So if you have sort of a mothership keyword you're going for, I think like our homepage has SEO software for digital agencies in this case. So SEO software is the core keyword, and then the kind of qualifier is the digital agencies, etc. So now that we have that vision, we're ready to draft page titles and meta descriptions. And when we're drafting page titles and meta descriptions, we're generally speaking doing it in our spreadsheet. And it looks a little bit like this. We're writing on the fly. And there are best practices we keep in mind. And so these can be nice to have kind of written somewhere in your process documentation, just so it's easy to remember. But we want to be enticing and concise with our page titles because we're trying to win the click, but we have a limited character count. We want to utilize our brand. Google really likes kind of tying it to a brand. Generally speaking, we leverage a separator like a dash or a vertical bar. We want to try to utilize a focus keyword, and we're aiming for 30 to 60 characters in general. So if we come in and we look at the page titles in this search results, you can see a couple different examples. Like these folks have the core keyword things to do in Barcelona. They added best and a number. That's very enticing. It's concise. Overall, I would describe this as a great page title. There are some studies that suggest that shorter is better here, and that you don't want to necessarily always max out your character count. That being said, sometimes it's just a longer title of the post. And they did not use a separator or anything to put in their brand, which is fine because you have really strong brand recognition with the brand being listed there and over here. TripAdvisor went with putting in the year, and then they try to use some capitalization out there to kind of like differentiate themselves from the competition. So that's interesting. Reddit is doing really well in the search results these days, I'd say 2024 in general. So kind of this forum-based approach, you can see what happens if your character count is long, it goes ... It's more conversational because it's not capitalized, so it sort of has a different feel here. And then in here, you can see some more examples of what people are doing in here. And pretty much none of these have a brand in them. So the brand piece is variable. Sometimes you want to get the brand in there, and sometimes you don't. And I'd say in our sort of art and science, I always put the brand in the homepage because people are searching for the brand on the homepage. I often do on pages. So if we talk about a page like this, I want to get in the name of our brand. And so we're using this separator, a dash here, and then putting our brand because we're matching the service to the company providing the service. But then when it comes to blog posts, I oftentimes do not put the brand in. I say often and not always, because none of this is like totally fixed in stone. And you can come in here and see I went, sort of low key and didn't go very long with this. And I didn't put Pathfinder or a mention of the brand in this page title. So those are some general best practices around page titles and meta descriptions, but you can see when you're doing this, there can be some value of actually searching for that core keyword on Google and seeing like what others are doing and deciding, what do you like that people are doing well, what's going to differentiate yours from the competition, etc. Next, I want to look at meta descriptions, and then I'm going to pause for a minute and answer some of the questions in the chat, just to make sure that to answer things while the topic is relevant. With meta descriptions, we're going with a sentence format, generally speaking, so it's not so heavily capitalized. We want to include a call to action because there's some signal that when we tell people what we want them to do as they move over and to the website, they're more likely to do it if they were told about it over on the search engine results page. So if it says, contact us to learn more, or schedule a discovery call, or buy now, there's more likelihood that the person's going to do the primary action if we put a call to action in. We want to aim for 155 to 160 characters. And then again, we want to use a focus keyword or a synonym or something, but generally speaking, we want to kind of try to keep using the keywords. And part of that is that when you come in here, you can see that the phrases that I entered up here, they get bolded down here in the meta description, which might be a tiny little signal for me as the consumer to click over to the website. So here's things to do in Barcelona. You can see in the meta descriptions, there's a little bit of things that get bolded. And then in other ones, you're like, why did they bold this? That's not the phrases I searched for, but oftentimes when you use a couple keywords in there, you'll get a little extra punch with that bolding occurring. So let's jump into the chat here, and I'll try to answer questions that are relevant. And I'm going to go back up. Okay, Justin. Okay, questions. Just getting in the chat. I'm going to start back to Justin's early question. Is there anything we can do to encourage Google to use the meta description in the search engine results page? I know that Google often uses text from the page instead. So that's a really, good example where Google doesn't always use the meta description that you wrote. Google often writes its own utilizing the text on the page. So one of the things that you can do is make sure that the text on the page, high on the page, is engaging, which it just should be naturally. And that you're okay with sort of Google snippeting this kind of content out instead of using your meta description. The other one is that usually the text on the page was heavily wordsmithed, right? So there was a copywriter involved in approval processes, etc. So my biggest tip for your meta description is to use the text on your page in the meta description. You're not often reinventing the wheel here. You're usually just grabbing some of the existing copy and then kind of playing around a little bit with word or order and things like that. So if I was writing this, I would literally start I haven't even read the content here. It's about 162 characters. Then I'd come in and be like, okay, do I like this? And I sort of like it, but it just kind of poses the question. But maybe it could be enticing because it sort of like sets up for success. But, I'd kind of evaluate that. And maybe decide that like the second sentence or something like this might be a little bit more engaging. But you can play around with using your own content in the meta description, but know that Google, and that will help to get it to be what Google utilizes more often, but know that Google might just write its own meta description anyways, which is frustrating. The other thing that you can do is just not over optimize your page titles and meta descriptions. And that tends to also help them get utilized. So, don't do too many best Google Ads agency in Colorado or whatever. Don't plug in too much punch, essentially, of overusage of keywords. Keep it really end user or audience focused more than SEO focused. And that'll also often get Google to use what you write instead of what they want to write. Let's see, it's important that the page hero matches well with the meta description. So they say, exactly. So we need continuity, right? And if we don't have that continuity between what we put in the page titles and meta descriptions and the experience on the page, Google is going to discount what we plugged in that field that's hidden and behind the scenes and use what we've surfaced. Because Google, these have been fields that have been long architected by SEOs and sort of keyword stuffed. So if we play that game, Google's not going to use our content, and this effort is sort of wasted. So we really want to use just good marketing best practices more than anything, which means using our good copy that we already wrote. Should we look in the Search Console for queries with high impressions but low clicks, so low click-through rate? Does that suggest the meta description could be better to improve click? Yeah, that definitely is. If you have the time and the opportunity to come in and really get into it. So this is a post that we wrote that I really didn't get heavily into in terms of SEO when we wrote it. And it's fairly recent. So I'm sure I put some kind of a page title and meta description on it. And now we have actual traction and we can see like what people are searching for and what our click-through rates look like and what our average position is. And we can sort this and think about this in terms of selecting a focus keyword with a couple different lenses. One is just the lens of opportunity. So I can just look at impressions and say Google Ads planning or Google Ads plan or Google Ads strategy template or Google Ads template. These are like the most searched for phrases in this space. So maybe I want to go after those. The other is I could say, okay, I want to go after one with a click-through rate in a position that I could really improve upon. So an 11% click-through rate is actually pretty good. But this one has really good inroads. So maybe Google Ads strategy template makes a lot of sense. And I should go and really try to like focus my page title and meta description around this. But then I also want to think a little bit about the business side of things. And so one of the things that we're noticing with this blog post on the business side is that we're getting a lot of conversions. So people are downloading this template, but less than half of the conversions are from our target audience. So half of them are like site owners trying to build their own Google Ads campaign. And we're trying to get in front of agency owners because that's who we work with. And so in here, is there anything I can figure out that would make more sense to get more of those agency owners and less of the business owners? I don't know the answer to that, but that could be another lens to apply. So a lot of different ways to think about selecting the focus keyword. And there's no right or wrong. You just want to be like kind of common sense or problem solving kind of mindset as you do so. Is there a penalty for bypassing 60 characters and 150? Nope, there's no penalty. And you sometimes see different numbers in different places, including when you're implementing these. And so these are just kind of general best practices. It's okay to go a little longer. You usually just get a little ... And I would not say that there is a penalty. Justin's got another question. If we add second or third keywords, like semantic keywords to the meta title and description, will it improve the ranking in the SERPs? Generally speaking, yes. I try not to just constantly repeat like best SEO software or something like that in both places. We'll see how I did. Best SEO software for agencies is here. Here I use the phrase SEO toolset instead. And I talked about SEO services. So this is an idea of using this concept of like semantic keywords or synonyms. And basically, I don't need to repeat this phrase everywhere. Using the phrase toolset and then using the phrase software over here, I've sort of given Google a little more context than if I just constantly use the phrase best SEO software. So I think that is generally a good practice to incorporate. How do I balance the primary service page versus the location-specific pages with page titles and meta descriptions? This is a really good one. Can we talk about service pages versus location pages as pillar pages? This is a really good question around like you're picking a focus keyword and I have these services pages here. And then on our site, I have some customer pages and I could also have more location pages. So on your agency website, you might want to get in front of people looking for the service in a service area or looking for a service for an industry, or you might have multiple service industries. Like, how do I blend that? And you have to kind of decide. So on our site, we could go with mapping all of our services pages to our geography. So the service in the place. And then this could be our match of the service to the industry we're serving. Other times you can have a contact page. If you do have multiple physical locations, you might have a page for each location. There's other ways you can use like creatively for your agency, like you can use a sort. So you can do like if you have a portfolio, you can have a sort of your portfolio where it's a service for an industry, a service in an area, and build a pillar page or a good SEO page out of that. So you just kind of want to be mindful of what you're working with and try to get strategic about how you sort of allocate things. One thing I would note is looking in the Search Console is really valuable because sometimes you have a vision of what that's going to look like. and then you come in and Google kind of already has this classified into a keyword space, it can be hard to change Google's mind and easier to sort of go with the flow, so to speak, when you're selecting the keyword, then say, no, I want this to be Google Ads agency in Colorado or whatever it is. Sometimes it's better to go with Google's plan and kind of come up with another inroad to that keyword space. I do believe, and not to get too off topic, but let me pop over. I could talk for about an hour on that topic of services pages and pillar pages and how to get all of these things. And I think if you can wait until December, we have kind of a location page, kind of local SEO webinar coming up that's going to delve into this world in a lot more detail. So back to the page title meta description world, we've written them, they're in a spreadsheet. We want to get feedback and edit. In this process, take a step back. You wrote them, move away from the project for 24 hours, come back in, always do a spell check. It's like the number one mistake I don't like making is having a misspelling in the page titles and meta descriptions because they're going to be on Google. You can ask others for feedback. That can be others on the team. That could be your client. Or that could be if you're a Pathfinder subscriber, you can send them to our team over email and we can review them and email you back. Or you can bring them to an office hours and we can look at these together. And then you kind of revise as needed. So since this is an art and a science, it's just a really great space to get a little feedback and somebody can read this and tell you how it sits with them. And give you another point of view or kind of just help you along the way. And once it's approved by the client, if this is going through client approval or gotten that feedback, you're ready to implement. And I'd call this really the easy part. It depends on your content management system, but this is kind of the plug and play piece of it. And you can, if you don't know how to implement it, you can just Google Squarespace page titles and meta descriptions or Wix page titles and meta descriptions and find some process documentation on how to get in there and implement. I do want to dive in just for a second more on this idea of automation versus customization, because we talked more about how to customize. When it comes to automation, I usually set that up actually, whatever I'm going to automate before I customize, and think of the automation as sort of the like baseline. And then when you customize, you're overwriting the automation. So if I come into Yoast and I go into the settings over here, I get to automate based on content type. So this is my automation here for my posts. And I have the title pulling in and then the excerpt. So if I do nothing, I know that my page titles and meta descriptions for blog posts are okay. I could do the same thing for pages, something like that. But for my pages here, I used a different variable. I used the title of the page, a separator, and then the site title because I wanted to put the brand in there. And I used an excerpt. If I come in and I look at other custom content types and I want to see what else we have webinars. In this case, I haven't gotten in and customized that, but I should probably add in here an excerpt or something. Or sometimes I write a sentence. So if it's like a product, it could be like shop for, and then I'll do an insert variable title from, and then I'll put business name, free shipping, and 5-star customer service. So I'm not saying this is amazing, but if I had products and I pulled this in, I'd know they're all, unique. And I could get rid of the excerpt one, or I could use the excerpt. So you can craft a sentence using variables and using text, or you can use something like the excerpt to just pull in something that you like. So I like to automate first, and then I like to come in and customize. So I want to spend a couple of minutes talking about ways to accelerate things. My contact information is here. You're welcome to email with questions, Lindsay at Pathfinder SEO. And I'll leave that up. But I want to talk about a couple other little things along the way and some nuances. So the next piece of this is how can I do this faster, better? And one of the ways that you can do that sometimes is with AI. So if you don't have a copywriter or you don't want to write them, you can come in and do this work on the fly using some of the AI functionality that's getting built into plugins like Yoast. So if in here I say use AI, I can let AI generate, and hopefully, okay, there we go. So I can let AI generate the titles, and then I can use my strategic planning and preference to pick the one that I want and then hit apply SEO title. And so this can be a really great time-saving tool for those of us that don't love copywriting. The reason I don't use it as much is more that going back to that idea that we should really use the content on the page. I kind of like the AI title generator here because it generally hits the focus keyword and then uses something pretty like engaging. So I like that. But in terms of the meta description, sometimes I want to use the copy from the page. And I don't want to kind of rewrite or sort of recompile and use something from AI. That's personal preference a little bit, but also just that idea that if we use our page copy, it might align a little bit better. So you can use AI, can also use something like ChatGPT and say, write me a page title and meta description. Here's the page copy. Give me 5 versions or something like that to write your work. The other time accelerator can be that sometimes we're doing this as a tune-up. So we talked about like, hey, we just haven't paid attention to this in a while. So we might go in and tune this up for a client. And we might want to scan the website and see what they have in there now and then improve upon it. So we're not starting from square one. We already have page titles and meta descriptions. What we want is a list or a spreadsheet of everything in the website that we can then read and review and then just sort of tune up the ones that matter. And for that, we use Screaming Frog to scan the website, and we export the HTML settings, and we organize this into our spreadsheet. So it still looks like this, and we scanned and extracted it. And then we can go through and we have all the content here. And if we decide we want to update or overwrite it, a lot of times what we do is we write in what we want it to be, and then we highlight that cell as like green or something. And anything in green are the ones that we need to get client approval on and then ultimately implement, because those are the ones that we're changing. And anything with no color code to it means we're leaving it as status quo. So that can be another way of sort of approaching this, is approaching it from a what do we have now and getting that organized in a spreadsheet and then auditing and reviewing it. And that's something we often do for those monthly clients. So I am going to answer more questions here live, and let's see what else. What have I not covered? Do I have any questions for you all? I do have questions, Dustin, for you all. You guys have been awesome in the chat. It's always so fun. And the first question is this valuable to you? And do you have, my second question is, do you have any tips for the audience? Because this is an art and a science. So what I'm sharing with you is not the end all be all of all things page titles and meta descriptions. There are a lot of ways to slice this and approach it. And so that can come back in. Mark commented, the most valuable part is how to charge for it. Yeah, and I would say that we haven't delved into that enough, but in general, the big thing is do charge for it. The second is determine a little bit of how you want to approach it. Sometimes it's just the client has 5 hours to invest. So I'm going to charge my hourly rate times 5 hours or whatever. And then I'm just going to be really good at knowing how to use those 5 hours to give them the most bang for their buck. The other ways that you can charge for this is essentially as part of monthly SEO. If you think this is a high opportunity task for your client and they have a big website, you can circle back to this and handle it in phases. So sometimes in phase 1, we do automation. In phase 2, we do the main navigation. And then in phase 3, we do customization for the top 25 blog posts. And then in phase 4, customization for the top 25 product pages. And so this is the kind of thing that from a business standpoint and from a delivery of service standpoint, you can start to say, well, it takes my team about X amount of time to do 25 pages. The client pays me a retainer of $1,000 a month. So I can do this, and I can be kind of blocky and strategic about how I wrap that in there. Mark asks, what's our agency standard for quoting these projects? Good question. So in general, page titles and meta descriptions aren't something that we're quoting as a standalone project. Most often, we're handling them in the SEO setup when we build that foundation, and we allocate, generally speaking, like 3 to 5 hours of effort within the project scope to this work. And then we multiply that by our hourly rate. Our hourly rate's $150 an hour. And so that's built in there. And then once we get into the monthly delivery, a lot of times we're just time boxing the effort. So if I give this to a copywriter, I'm saying, okay, you have 5 hours to go work on it, and we have a 10-hour a month SEO project or something like that. So I'm mostly managing time. Right now, I have in my inbox today, actually, somebody that wants me to crawl like 10,000 page website. And they want, even though they know there's not a lot of return for it, an export of all of that. And then for us to come in and say, how many hours of effort do we think we should add to sort of that tune-up where we like highlight them in green and rewrite? And so what I'll probably go back to and say is like, we'll do the scan and we'll do the evaluation. That's going to take us like an hour or two to wrap our head around how much effort we should put in. And then we'll loosely estimate how many we think need customization. And then we'll decide how deep we're going to go with that customization. Like if I'm looking in the Search Console at keywords, looking at competitors, writing, editing, et cetera, it could take us about 15, 20 minutes per page title and meta description. If I'm moving fast and I'm skipping a step or two along the way to just like shore things up a little notch, we can probably move faster. So just kind of trying to estimate out that project. Yeah, Mark, it's a big project, and I'm fortunately not going to be the one doing the work. But that being said, in this case, it's coming from a client that likes perfection in those like automated SEO audits. Even though there's really no reason to go in and do that from a strategic like business standpoint. So they like want to check the box. They don't want to see errors and warnings that say you're missing page titles or you're missing a meta description or it's too long. So they want to spend money in that department, even though we feel like it maybe isn't the best money spent. Let's see, I'm going to go back. Okay, Reed asked a great question. If I'm refreshing a website or even adding meta descriptions to pages where they don't currently exist, how long will it take for the search engines to pick up the changes? It can be anywhere from hours to days. You can, if you're trying to like really push it out there, you can come in and say, okay, I changed it. And so I'm going to come into the Search Console and I'm going to inspect the URL, and then I'm going to page change, click the request indexing and try to like speed it up. Because it depends on how much resource Google gives to your site in terms of how often they crawl and index pages before they'll find that new content and then refresh things in the search results. So if you're trying to be aggressive with that update, you can come in and manually request some indexing in here. Let's see. Justin asks, can you cover differing search types, transactional, commercial, navigational information? How do we make our description resonate with search types? Like an e-commerce site might want to write for people making transactional searches. That's a really good concept to be thinking about, kind of an advanced, way of looking at page titles and meta descriptions, end user intent, right? So we're writing these to entice somebody to click and to win the click. And we want to think about the search term they're looking at. Is it information gathering? Is it transactional, et cetera? And then we want to make our descriptions resonate with the search types. And so the biggest thing that we want to do is identify if it's transactional, then our call to action should probably be transactional. So shop, explore, buy now, et cetera. If it's informational, then we want the tone to sort of be helpful. So, our tone might be, coming in and just making sure they feel like we're coming alongside, that it's going to be easy for them to use. Maybe it makes them excited, et cetera. So you kind of want to, like you're saying, think about the intent of the search query and then map it to the writing style that you have in your meta description so that there's a lot of alignment there. I'm going to go ahead and let those that are watching the recording go. I'm going to hit pause record. thank you all for joining, but I'll stay on the chat here if folks that are here live have questions that are in this topic or beyond. I've got a few extra minutes and can hang out live. So thanks again for those that are joining us in the recording, and I hope you have a great day.